So how can you get maximum points in the presentation sections of the ophthalmology portfolio applying for training here in the UK? When I myself first started building my portfolio towards ophthalmology years and years ago, I was also confused about how I could get full marks in the presentation sections of the portfolio. Over the next coming months and years, I learned from my mentors and colleagues in ophthalmology how to go about doing this, and I scored the full marks in the presentation sections myself. And today in this video, I will take you through how you can do that as well, and what are the requirements for you to get the full marks in the presentation section. And as always, at the end of the video, we will show you some important points to consider while getting these points. So let's begin by talking about what the actual evidence folder needs from you. And as always, in the description in my video, I will have a link for you to go to the evidence folder yourself if you want to follow along with what I say in the video. Otherwise, let's begin it here in the video itself. So the total points you get by doing the presentation sections is 6 marks. Important thing to remember is that if you presented in your local hospital or in the university, that does not count for the marks for the presentation section. Also, another important thing you need to know is that these presentations do not necessarily need to be specific to ophthalmology. So let's say you were doing some presentations before you actually came into ophthalmology in, I don't know, internal medicine, general surgery, in pathology. They can still be counted for this section as long as they meet the criteria that I'm going to talk about here on out. So let's begin now. The main 3 sections that this portfolio scores points for you is in regional presentations, in national presentations, and international presentations. Starting with the regional presentations. The regional presentations score you 1 point each for your presentation. Now, what do we mean when we say regional presentations? Now, regional presentations, if let's say we take examples from the United Kingdom, the conferences like Scottish Ophthalmological Society meeting, Midlands Ophthalmological Society meeting, these sort of meetings count towards regional presentations. They are not national meetings and they are not very local meetings. They're just in the middle. So these are regional presentations covering a region basically. Now the good thing is that let's say you're in another country and you have attended the regional presentation in that country, that counts as well. So just make sure it's clear, what sort of presentation you're attending, whether it is in the United Kingdom or it is elsewhere in the world, it will still count towards these presentations. Next, we come to national meetings. Now, each national meeting scores you 2 points. So let's say you presented in national meetings here in the UK, like the Royal College Congress or the, let's say, British Oculoplastic Surgery Society's meeting. That's where you presented another presentation. You can get 2 points for each presentation in these meetings. Similar as last time, if you have attended and presented in a national conference or meeting in another country in the world, that also counts for the points you get in this section. And so finally, we come to the international meetings. Now, international meetings score you 3 big points. Let me give you some examples of some international meetings where you could have presented. So there is the American Academy of Ophthalmology's meetings, where you present to an international audience and the meeting itself is actually international as well. That counts for 3 points. There's one in Europe called EVER. That meeting is an international meeting as well, and let's say you presented there, you would have gotten the 3 points as well for one presentation. Now let's quickly talk about what I have presented myself and what I have scored in my presentation section as well, because obviously that must be one thing that you might be waiting for. Now, I did 2 presentations only, and both presentations were in an international conference. And so that is how I maxed out the points in my own portfolio. So you can see how you don't need to do one presentation, or you don't have to do different presentations in different sections. As long as you meet those 6 points somehow, that's fine. Now, whether you do just international presentations to get to that, or you do just national or just regional, or even a mix of each, that's all fine. As long as you come to the total of 6 points, that's what ultimately matters. So here you'll see evidence of one of my presentations in one of the international conferences, and here is the other, and both together got me the 6 points that I needed to score the full points in this section. Now let's talk about how do we actually submit the evidence. Now that we have presented the presentations, how do we actually put those evidences in the portfolio? And that's what we'll talk about now. So firstly, what is required of you is a list of all the presentations or posters you have done, with the copies of abstracts or posters. If you have done a poster presentation, you should also make it very clear whether that presentation was a poster presentation or an oral presentation. Now that actually affects your points, and I will tell you how very soon. You must also give proof in the form of an abstract book, if that was what was relevant to your presentation, or a letter signed by your supervisor. Next, these presentations should be presentations of original work or studies. They cannot be didactic lectures. So you cannot just present a topic taken from a book and call that a presentation. No. It must be an original piece of work. Next, if your presentation is duplicating either your own previous work or somebody else's work, then it will also not be counted. Next, let's talk about COVID times, because obviously COVID cannot leave us alone even now. If your presentation was cancelled during COVID, but you did all the work and you prepared everything as well, and you can give proof of this, then your presentation will still be counted. Well, great news. Great, so now that we have gotten the submission aspect of things out of the way, let's give you some important must-know points. Number one, don't forget that each paper is counted only once. What does that mean? You cannot present the same paper in the regional presentation and then the national presentation and then the international presentation and expect to get points. No, only the highest ranking presentation will get points. So don't submit the same study in different presentations and put them all in the portfolio, because you will not score points for each of them. You will only score for the highest of them. Next, similar to what I talked about the COVID points, if your presentation has been accepted into the regional, national, international sections, but let's say the interview has come around already and you haven't had the opportunity to actually present, the presentation is somewhere in the future. As long as you can provide evidence that it is in the works and your presentation has been accepted and you're about to present, that scores the points. Now, remember how I told you that the oral presentation will score differently from the poster presentation? Well, here is how. The oral presentation is responsible to give you the full marks that I talked about. You will only get half a mark if you do a poster presentation. What do I mean? So let's say you did a national presentation and now you're wondering, oh, I should get the full 2 points, shouldn't I? But you only did the poster presentation at the national meeting. You will now get half of the suggested mark, which would be 1. Similarly, let's say you went to an international meeting, and remember I told you that you're supposed to get 3 marks for the international presentations. Well, let's say you did a poster presentation in the international meeting. Take a guess how many marks you'll get. Half. So you'll get 1.5 marks for that. Whereas let's say you did an oral presentation at an international meeting, only then will you get the full 3 marks. If you did an oral presentation at the national meeting, only then will you get 2 full marks. So keep that in mind. Oral presentation score the full mark, poster presentation score half of that mark. But wait, there is more. You will only score that full mark if you're also the first author. If you're not the first author, let's say you're the second author or the third, fourth, fifth, and so on and so forth, you will only score again half a mark. So first author scores the full mark. Let's say you are the first author for a national meeting where you did an oral presentation. Now you will score the full 2 points. But let's say you did an oral presentation at a national meeting, but you were the second author. You will get half a mark. So you'll get 1 point. So to get a full mark, as I've described to you from these, separate sections for regional, national, and international, not only must your presentation be oral, but you also must be the first author of the presentation. If that wasn't enough, here's another one. You cannot duplicate the studies that you put here into the publication section, nor can you put the meetings that you have presented in this section into the commitment to specialty sections. Strict. Basically that means is, let's say you attended RCOFT conference 2022 and you presented a presentation there and you put it here in this section. You cannot put this now in the commitment to specialty section. And whichever study you placed here that you presented, you cannot put that research in the publication section. I know, life is hard. But yeah, despite all of that, I want to let you guys know that, it is possible. Obviously, I have done it and many others have done it before me and after me. It is very much doable. The competition to ophthalmology gets more difficult every year, but that's because there are more and more applicants, and as a result, the portfolio guidelines and entry guidelines become more and more tougher. But if anyone can do it, you can too. And so that's how you score the full marks in this section of the ophthalmology portfolio. If you would like for me to keep making such videos on ophthalmology education, portfolio guidance, you can support my channel by liking this video and subscribing to my channel. Obviously, if there's anything in particular that you are interested in me to talk about in particular, leave that down in the comment section below. The link to my latest video is right over here, and I will see you in the next video.